Hello, everyone, and welcome to another amazing at-home programming. This is an amazing movie talk we're about to start. My name is Anthony DeSanctis. I'm the cinema comedy specialist at ArtsQuest. Again, thank you for coming to this at-home programming presented by BSI Corporate Products. So we got some other great stuff coming up, a few comedy shows tomorrow night. Just go to steelstacks.org/film/comedy for all the great stuff we have coming up. But I'm going to kick it over right now to Adriana Gober. She's on our cinema committee and the co-curator of our First Saturday Horror Series, and is a programmer of the, I'm going to butcher this title, it's the Midnight Society something, right? It's a service I need to have. Well, let me unmute you. Hold on. You good to go?
Yeah. It's Midnight Movie Society.
Thank you. All right, Adriana, how you doing?
I'm doing all right, Anthony. How are you?
I'm good. Okay, so are you ready to talk about Welcome to Chechnya? I mean, this is obviously a very heavy film with lots to talk about, and it's just, I was blown away by this movie. That's all. I've seen it multiple times now, and it's just, it's a lot to take in, and it's amazing to think about what is going on in the world right now. I mean, and in the middle of a pandemic, but there's just clearly very more pressing issues out there. So, yeah.
All right. So, first of all, I just want to thank you, Anthony, and I want to thank everyone joining us tonight for this ArtsQuest at Home event. Welcome to Chechnya basically follows a group of incredibly brave activists who put their own lives at risk to help rescue and relocate LGBT people who are fleeing state-sanctioned violence in the Russian Republic of Chechnya. And it's, as far as I'm concerned, the most important documentary of the year. And although, as Anthony alluded to, it is not an easy watch, it's essential. And I'm very pleased to be joined by the film's editor, Tyler Walk. How are you doing tonight, Tyler?
Tyler, your volume's a little rough. We lost you. You sound like you're every time you speak. Oh no, we were doing so good.
How's this? Does this work?
Oh,
that's good. Yeah.
That worked.
First of all, I just want to, thank you for having me and such kind words about the film. And I think that even though there are, we're all dealing with this lockdown in various ways, we still do have to remember that there definitely are a lot of people in the world who have it much tougher than we do if we are able to sit and chat about a film. So I count myself lucky to be in this position, but also very lucky to be able to help tell their stories and hopefully get some meaningful change to happen in the world. So I really appreciate everyone who's joined, and thanks for having me.
So I want to start just by asking you how this project came together, because you had worked with David France, the director, previously on How to Survive a Plague, which for those watching is another very excellent and essential documentary, so check that out. So did he approach you just saying like, hey, I have this idea for this documentary, like what do you think? Do you want to get involved? Like how did this all come together?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, David and I have worked on How to Survive a Plague back in 2011. I think, I don't know how far to go back, but I was an assistant editor and looking for my first feature film as an editor, and he gave that project to me with Woody Richmond, How to Survive a Plague, and he was a first director. So that was my first kind of real editing project as an editor. And that went on to also go to Sundance that year and get an Oscar nomination. And it really sort of propelled the career that I had as an editor. And then years later, David and I became incredible friends during that process. I mean, it's like having a child, making a documentary and sort of letting it out into culture and seeing what happens and hoping that it has a life and enacts some change. And then years later, he was, he wanted to do another film about the trans activist Marsha P. Johnson. And so we made the Death and Life of Marsha P. Johnson in 2017. And, he's always, seen me as his editor, and I've always, if anything's going on in my life, I kind of clear it out so I can work with him. And lo and behold, in 2000, I guess it was 18, these events actually started happening the summer of 2017. And there was a news article that was written by Masha Gessen about what was happening in Chechnya. And it was, it got maybe a day or two of news coverage, and then that was that. And then nothing else happened. It sort of just got swept under the rug of Trump's tweet cycle. And then David, he knew Masha and said, well, is there a way I can get embedded there? Can I go get some cameras and start working with these activists to see how they're helping LGBTQ people get out of Chechnya through sort of an underground railroad system? And through the trust that he earned through them and his producer on the ground, Askold Kurov, they were able to capture, surprisingly, incredible moving footage with just basic consumer cameras and iPhones. And I think after his first trip there in fall of 2017, he reached out and said, I got the next movie. It's ongoing right now, but we need to line up and we need to start talking about this. And I was on a film then and finishing up in January or so. And as soon as I finished, I just hopped right on and started watching footage as it started pouring in. And throughout that entire year, throughout 2017, 2018, and the beginning of 2019, we were still, shooting. The story was just changing constantly. People we were following that we were seeing their progress about getting, relocated and finding their destination. They'd get, removed from that country and we couldn't find them. There were lots of lost threads and stuff. So I think that ultimately, the bulk of the editing work happened in 2018. But he, I don't know, that's just sort of, David calls, I'll come and work on his films because we just sort of have a great rapport working together. He allows for a lot of creativity. I think my first kind of goal as an editor is to make him cry, and finding, as many scenes as possible to edit that might have the most emotion and just making it as epic and emotional as possible. That way we kind of, and then string it out and kind of see, okay, well, not every scene needs to be like that, but what is the one scene that it really hits it on the head? That's probably the heart of the film. That's probably the peak of what you need to go to. And so we start kind of building a film around that idea. Anyway, I'm kind of off on a tangent about the editing process there, but yeah, I mean, David made several trips. He was in danger most of the time, and I was in the comfort of the edit room, watching this harrowing footage come in, through our, sort of clandestine hard drive railroad.
Yeah, and that was my next question, because I was wondering if you were involved with the filming at all, if you were in Chechnya, because as I understand it, a lot of this documentary was kind of filmed guerrilla style, because it was, Chechnya is very heavily policed, and it was an extremely risky production. So I was just curious if you had any insight into that aspect of the documentary, but it sounds like you were mostly in post.
We all kind of figured out, I'm mostly on the fringes, but we were having meetings daily about how to go into Chechnya, how to get, any sort of roadblock prepared for. David had burner phones that he could just reach out. He sort of pretended to be a wealthy tourist, and their story was that he found, the people that were following in the film, that they would be his tour guides that he found in Russia, and paid them an enormous amount of money just to show him Chechnya. And that was their cover story. They were prepared at every stop, and that worked a couple times. I think that I think it was just sort of paying lip service to humor me to come with them once or twice, but there was no way I was going to go. I don't think that was, I'm not that adventurous. I think I'll leave that to the pros. But I think a lot of this footage was especially the stuff in Chechnya was iPhone footage, and it looked surprisingly good. And it was just sort of secret he was pretending to be like a tourist, and some of it was GoPros as well. A lot of that stuff was just very hidden, and they had, ways to just sort of get rid of the memory cards and stash the memory cards in case they were ever getting pulled over or had to show what they were filming. So it was all very planned out. And I remember this, we were all kind of watching David's daily ping on the internet. We were tracking one of his phones just to make sure everything was okay, and we were just sort of seeing how things were going. And luckily he made it out, and everything was fine, and everything actually went surprisingly smooth. And that's most of that is the story of Anya in Chechnya, and getting her out. And her story didn't end up quite as smooth. But just being able to see her story and seeing how she was able to get out is representative of many of the other individual stories throughout the film.
Speaking of stories, how did you determine which stories to include in the narrative? Because at some point in the documentary, it mentions that I think it was 151 Chechens had been relocated by these activists, and that's a lot of footage and a lot of people to cover in a documentary. So how did you narrow it down to Anya and Maxime and some of the other people who are featured prominently?
Right. I mean, that's a really good question, and it's a hard part of the job, is watching all the footage, honestly, to know, like, oh wait, is that going to be relevant at all? But I mean, to be fair, we did not film 151 people's stories. That would have been incredible, and then a multi-part series that is still going on.
Sure, yeah.
But I think that it was very clear that Maxim was going to be a character in the film, because he is the one that goes public. And that is, supposed to enact change and, make it, he becomes the face of the purge. And he was clearly going to be part of the storyline. Someone like Anya was apparent to us that she was going to be part of the story whenever we really found that we had a difficult time telling the stories of females in Chechnya, because they, for the most part, have a much harder time getting out, because it's a largely Muslim country, and they cannot leave their home without a brother or husband or father with them. It is much harder for them to escape. And so we had to, once we got the opportunity to potentially film an extraction of a female, we kind of jumped at that opportunity. We had a few characters, and this is something I kind of alluded to in the email. We were building towards a somewhat happy ending. We had a character, a female character, who we didn't get her extraction, but we had her in the safe house, and she, we had her time there at the safe house, and then her transfer to a safe country. And then sort of followed her there. Like, how does she assimilate to the culture there? How does she start to have a life? Does she start to go to school? Does she start to make friends and have partners? Like, what is her life after that? And that was an important part of the story for us for a very long time. Because it says to the viewer, well, people do have lives after this. This is what they're living for. This is why we want to get them out, because it's all ultimately about love, and we want people to love who they want to love, and there should be no one blocking them or getting in their way of doing so. So that's what we're trying to build towards. However, we found that in our test screenings, that while people weren't saying this outright, it kind of felt, well, problem solved. People are surviving and they're okay. And it almost became like well, people are getting from point A to point B, here's how they're doing it. And it didn't really feel like there was a call to action at the end, that there was more work to do. And clearly there was a lot of work to do, and still is a lot of work to do. So we found that wasn't really the way to go. And ending on this feeling that it's just cyclical and is going to keep happening until we do something about it, was ultimately the right feeling that we wanted to end on. And people leaving the theater, and you were talking about this earlier on, is that it's just, people are feeling devastated. People are feeling that how can this be something that is going on in the world? People also felt a sense of culpability, like they're responsible. How did we not know about this? How did I not hear about this? Why is this being swept under the rug? And that was a benefit that we didn't really realize we could go for until we were sort of near the end of the edit. And that was a surprising feeling that we discovered towards the end that was happening. And gosh, it's tough as an editor to see people kind of walking out of the theater with their heads down and just like kind of, for lack of a better word, kind of bummed. It's tough to see that, but it's effective. And I think that we can't have a happy ending in a story like this. The history is still being written, as opposed to something like How to Survive a Plague, where they end up getting the antiretroviral drugs, and then after they get the drugs, there is a whole other film there as well, and someone should make that. But that's where that film stops too. It's hard to choose where they stop sometimes, but you just gotta kind of test it out.
So one element of this documentary that's been generating a lot of conversation and debate is the fact that you utilize this facial swapping technology to conceal the identities of the subjects, which for some people raises some ethical questions about the concept of truth in documentary filmmaking. So I was just curious about what led to the decision to use deep fake technology instead of more traditional methods of concealment, and what were some of the other ethical considerations that went into making this documentary? Because it's kind of, there's a lot.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. I think first and foremost in the hierarchy of ethics, when it comes to the sort of digital face swap technology that we're using, the one that is most important is that we want to protect their identities. And that is paramount to everything. And David made sure whenever we were filming any of the subjects, he ensured that every person, that we will disguise them in a way that even their mother would not be able to recognize them. And that was a profound, that profoundly opened up the characters in the film and allowed David and Askell to shoot them. But it also made a giant challenge for us in post-production. So during post-production, I was editing in New York, and sort of upstate New York, and in the city, and we had air-gapped computers. They never touched the internet. We actually removed the airport cards and any sort of cards that have some sort of wireless capabilities, Bluetooth, all that kind of stuff. We made sure that they could not potentially touch the internet. There were, I think, only 2 copies of drives. All the original footage, I think, is all destroyed. And so that allowed me to edit with the raw footage, to edit with the real faces. And we found that, it's our characters. We fall in love with them. We look into their eyeballs. We see who they are. We feel their emotion. And yet we have this challenge now that we have to disguise them. So we started looking for different ways to do that. We all know the traditional blurry faces. We've all seen cops where they're blocky faces, or shot in darkness, or things like that. And we just instinctively said that's not going to make anybody fall in love with them at all, like we fall in love with our characters. So what do we do? So we started reaching out to VFX companies, friends we knew, and brought a lot of people in to say, what would you do? We showed them a clip. How could you disguise them? What do you think we could do? And we tried a few ideas. We tried a few things. Like, I think one of the deepest dives we went into was with animation, a process called rotoscoping, where frame by frame you kind of cut out each character or part of the frame that you want to, sort of doing it in our frame. You cut out a frame here, and then you fill it with a different animation or a different picture or something, but you do that frame by frame by frame by frame. It takes a very long time. So we had a sort of small army of animators in for a week to rotoscope an entire scene. But what they did was animated them. They made them cartoons. They would put filters on them to sort of make their eyes bigger or their nose smaller or their mouth a little bigger, or to add hair on their head, or like to try to disguise them in a way that held up to your mother wouldn't even be able to recognize you. And I will say that, sure, their mother would not be able to recognize them in that state. It was very, very cartoony and very kind of out of this world. And what it ended up doing was taking us away from them, and it kind of otherized them, and it made us not have an emotional connection to them whenever we did test it. And then so we were kind of stuck. Oh my gosh, well, that didn't work. That was a pricey experiment, but that didn't work. What do we do? And so I think we got into, I'm actually not sure how David and Alice got in touch with, I think Johnny Han was the VFX director, I believe, on this. He suggested and gave us samples of doing what's sort of known in culture now as a deep fake kind of technology. And we worked with him on that, and that started to look good. And we started to figure out that, and he had a team of people, and Ryan Laney, who is the mastermind behind it all, had he always talked about rows and rows of powerful computers. I just picture like that Matrix, thing going on with just cranking out frame by frame, tracking eyeballs, tracking nostrils, tracking mouths, and putting on these activists. We shot activists from every angle, in different lighting conditions, saying a phrase that would use every phrase that a mouth would use in the Russian language, and putting that slowly onto every frame of every character that we needed to face swap. So that was a very long process, but most of that happened after I was done editing. We locked picture early 2019, and they started that face swapping stuff like a week later. And it's interesting because I left the project to go work on another one once we locked picture, and my assistant Max Anderson is in the edit room working with David, working with all these animations that are coming in, throwing them in, working with David. Notes are going back and forth. I'm hearing about all this sort of hectic workflow that's happening, but I knew this was going to happen. That having a locked picture sitting there, it's not gonna remain locked. So there were changes that eventually started to happen. David was watching the film months after months, and the faces started to the new faces that were coming in actually started to change some scenes, which was an unpredictable outcome of doing some of the face swaps. For the positive, like things that were, especially, for those who, haven't seen the film, close your ears at this part, but the point where we do take off the mask, where we do take off the face from Maxime, we originally cut that where he would talk to the cameras, the face was still on him, and then after he said what he says at the conference, the face melts away at the end. But we felt, once we saw the face and we tried it there, we said that's not where the face should come off at all. It needs to come off as soon as he sits down at the table and the cameras are clicking. That's when his mask is coming off. That's when he's going public. That's when, people are streaming his face right then and there. So after, and it's a shocking moment when his mask does come off and we as the viewer are seeing him for the first time, this person that we have seen with a completely different face the entire time. And we're finally seeing his true eye color, his true face. And what he says is just extremely impactful. And he, you see on his face how scared he is to have come forward, but knowing that it is the right thing to do. And I think that, it proves to be a very effective moment. And ultimately, we were able to get the emotion across of every character that we wanted to poke through. And we're very proud of the sort of deep fake technology. Of course, there are very, it's not perfect, and there are a lot of, there was a ton of cleanup up until the last minute, and I'm sure up until the premiere on HBO as well or something. But you still see their emotions. You're able to connect to the characters, and that was very important to us. And most of all, you are not able to recognize who they really are. So
yeah, I mean, that moment with the big reveal with Maxime, that was one of the most powerful moments of the documentary for me as well. Another really effective element of the documentary is the inclusion of that cell phone video footage that was intercepted by the LGBT activists. Some of that footage is really shocking, but it really effectively drives home how dire the situation is there for many people. So I was curious how you guys came to obtain that footage, and how you decided where exactly to place it within the narrative.
Right. Well, that's an interesting question. We struggled in the beginning with figuring out a way to filmically prove that these were happening. We don't have cameras in the torture chambers. Nobody was filming whenever these things were happening. Clearly, I think the most evidence that was taken was, cell phone pictures that people would take once they were released, if they were released at all. That's sort of last on their mind, is to take pictures to prove that something was happening to them. However, what was happening was that the perpetrators who were doing these acts, they were taking pictures and videos with their own cell phones, but they weren't, and what their purpose was to kind of have these trophies of the acts that they were doing. And they started sharing them with people that they knew as sort of bragging rights, to say, these things have happened, look what we did. And one thing spreads to another, and some of these videos end up on very unsecure channels, WhatsApp channels, signal channels, and they can be shared with whoever. And to go down the path of how we exactly got them, they became part of unsecured chats, and we obtained them through our activists that are on the ground there. And they would share them with us, and it also just becomes proof in the film that these things are happening. And there are only, I think, 3 in the film, but they're very, I guess there's kind of 4, but they're very noticeable whenever they do happen. And we really needed to set up the threat in the beginning, and so that's why the first one is there. We needed to see, this is real. We're just going to throw it out there that this is real. This is not going to be a murder mystery. This is not going to be is this a real thing happening? We're just going to say, this is a real thing happening. And then we get to I think about midway through the film, whenever we start talking about how hard it is for female Chechens to leave the country, that's when we show the murder of I believe it's the sister of the man who stones her, basically with a cement block. To bring up the idea of Anya. And then the last one, the rape, was one of the tougher things that I've kind of ever edited. And it just gets to, whenever that footage kind of arrived in the edit room, it was shocking for all of us, because we knew, I think we had a little bit of a heads up that this footage was coming in. And whenever it arrived in the edit room, it was just David and I in the edit room. We just said, we just want to watch it and see what we can do with it. And I think that David and I sat for a half an hour with it. We watched it. I was going to be very diligent with it. I just wanted to say, let's watch it, let's edit it, let's throw it in, let's be done with it. Because I don't want to do it. And that's what we did, because footage can be very affecting watching it over and over, and you kind of have to just remove yourself as an editor sometimes and just look at it as footage to tell a story. And we quickly edited that, threw it in. It's filled with it's mostly sound. There is some imagery to make sure that the audience knows that we're not creating that scene in people's minds. But it's hard to know. And this is we've gotten some pushback in some reviews about how much to show of this, and I understand each one of those ideas or criticisms. And we talked about every frame of what to put in, from the brother lifting the boulder to smash his sister's head in with, which frame to end on, how to not make it feel like it is glorifying or being exploitative in any way. But we really wanted to make sure that there was no question that this was happening, and we did not want to water it down. To be honest with you, we did not want to water this down, and that has helped the film reach a wider audience because of that controversy. And I think that is only a positive, because that elevates the stories and says this truly did happen. So
Right.
yeah, anyway, sorry, I got a little choked up there for a second.
No, I mean, it's really, really heavy stuff. And, I think about this a lot when I watch documentaries like this, just how the people who worked on the documentary kind of like manage that emotional baggage, because, it can't be easy to be editing this material, but something else I've been thinking about, with the coronavirus and there being, so much like chaos and confusion going on, I've kind of just been thinking about how that must really complicate, what these activists are doing over there. And I was just curious, for those of us at home, like, do you have any suggestions of what we can do to, help the Russian LGBT network, or, David and Olga and everything that they're doing to save LGBT Chechens?
Mm-hmm. I mean, as mentioned in the film, the best place to go is welcome to Chechnya.com. And there is a direct, right on the front page, a place to donate. And that money directly goes to the Russian LGBT network. And there is also actually a place to donate to Maxim's family. And all that stuff has massive impact on their lives, because an LGBT network is not funded in any way by the Russian government. They're getting squeezed left and right. They are in a year or two, they may be a criminal organization. So that is the best way to help at this point, is to give, by far.
Thank you. Well, I think it's about time to kick it over to audience questions. But before that, Anthony, do you have anything you want to ask Tyler, or any comments?
Yeah, Tyler, question I had, and I don't know if you'll have an answer for this or if it's still ongoing, and I probably could have just researched this myself, so I apologize. But has there been any updates on Anya or the pop star? Are they still, their whereabouts, are they still unknown?
Good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. That's something we keep asking our contacts, but we end up getting the same news every time. We have no idea.
Got it.
Yeah, that'll be one that we really hope we hear from at some point in life. We joked about if the world would change and everything, of course you get kind of idealistic, if everything would go just as we hoped, and they would no longer be persecuted, and Russia would be welcoming to LGBT citizens. Would there be a release of the film 20 years from now without the face swap technology? And those people would come forward, and it would be, a grand thing. But I think, news 20 years from now might be truth about what happened to both of them. And that may be when it happens. But as it stands right now, we just have no idea. and it sounds like it's doing the same thing for you. It's just kind of hanging on us. Like, well,
Yeah.
what can we do?
I mean, as we've talked, this is a very heavy film, and like it stays with you long after it ends. And
Absolutely.
I've watched this multiple times now, so it's not left my mind in any way. But no, I hope that there is, questions are answered about their whereabouts, and I agree with everything you said. I mean, I would love 20 years down the line, like you said, faces are off, an extended cut with a happy title card at the end saying what happened,
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, so let's kick it over to Nick. I do know that we have some questions. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, we have an intern. His name is Nick White. If you have any questions, please shoot them to him. Nick, say hello.
Hello, everyone. How you doing?
All right, so do we have any questions?
Yes, we actually have a few from Kyle, and he would like to be unmuted. Kyle, are you good? Okay, let's take care of that.
Hi, Kyle.
There we go. Hey, thank you for doing this, first of all. I really hope once this whole coronavirus situation is over, I'll run into you at a Blue Collar Post meeting and I can buy you a drink, because I think all your work is phenomenal.
I appreciate it. Look forward to that.
I'm an online guy, which obviously you said you weren't really there for the online process, so I'll try to narrow this down in scope. During your offline, how did you handle security? I mean, you talked about having air-gapped workstations, and I'm sure you weren't using a shared storage or anything like that.
Right.
But how did you handle like transcripts and paper edits? And did you have a coding system for names? Like, how did you, to what level did you go in protecting that?
Yeah, I mean, all of that stuff was being thrown around the office on USB drives, and we had to check out the USB drives. And if we were transferring documents, those were all in USB drives right into the computers, copied off into, the desktop.
But like in the Avid, did you have actual names?
No, we didn't have actual names. They were always code names for every character throughout. But actually, I mean, your first question though, how did we, get transcripts? We had an army of transcribers there, day in, day out as the footage was coming in. And those, I think using Transcriva, if you want to get specific, I'm pretty sure it was Transcriva, and then that would go right into Avid.
And script sync from there.
And I didn't really use script sync too much, to be honest. I think they created subcaps through that, and that was the way that I went. I mean, that's how I had to watch footage, and then just sort of took notes from there.
And then, did you have any issues that you know of going into finishing with the whole complicated VFX process and the fact that it's iPhone footage? I used to work at HBO Docs. I know that their standards process is very interesting.
I know some nightmare. I was there for the color correct, so I know the online was happening as we were, doing that. And
who did the color?
It was Will Cox.
Okay,
yeah. He's incredible.
He's one of the greatest people working with terrible footage.
Oh my gosh, it's unbelievable the magic that he can do. I mean, even as the VFX shots were coming in, we were like, hey, can you take off a little line of the nose that didn't work? He just fixed everything. He's just amazing. But yeah, I mean, all that stuff was being a mess. But I think one of the biggest things that we had to nip in the bud really quick was that there was a bunch that were shot in PAL. And so we had a big problem with that with putting the face swap on that, because we were just getting, interlacing all the time, and you couldn't get clean frames. So you could, oh my gosh,
So they didn't go through like an Alchemist before they sent to the VFX house?
We didn't do that. We slowed it down. We slowed it down to do that. So, so we didn't see like, oh, there's the mask. And then, oh wait, no, you saw their real face for half a frame. It's like all that stuff would drive us crazy. But they did their magic at Final Frame. It was always coming in, and they were able to knock it out. I'm sure that Max, the AE, would tell you differently, and that it was a nightmare. But
have you ever known an AE to say something's an easy job?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think that having a great AE makes a movie happen. I mean, God, I don't even know how to sync footage anymore. Just anyway. Yeah.
I do have an editorial question, but I'll let go to whoever else has questions.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, keep asking. We don't have any questions.
Okay. So there's a portrayal of suicide in the film, a suicide attempt, and it is very graphic, and it includes, tight shots of the individual as well as a close-up of the mechanism imagery. This is something that we've had over the last decade, an evolving conversation about how you portray in film, both in reporting and in documentary. Given in the overall plot of the film, it's a fairly minor event, the actual portrayal of the means, not the event of the attempt. What was your conversation like as far as what to show and why to show it, given the possibility of potential copycat or triggering for those who have experienced suicide ideation?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was a point of conversation throughout the entire film, and that was. I'm not sure if we labeled him in the film, so I'm not going to say what their fake name was. But that character was a way bigger character in previous iterations.
And the arc just got cut.
What's that?
And that arc just got trimmed.
Yeah, that arc just really got trimmed. But ultimately, what that character did for us was show us the trauma of leaving his home country.
Yeah.
That's how he dealt with it. He was a troubled kid, and that wasn't his first attempt.
Yeah.
But that was the one that was really captured very powerfully. So I mean, I'm not really sure what the question specifically is.
The shot of the means, the shot of the mechanism of injury.
Right.
I forget if it was razor blades or I forget what it was.
It was a razor that he took out. Yeah. I mean, I'm not one to skirt around something that needs to be shown. That's just not my MO as an editor. I'm really not sensitive to that kind of stuff. It's especially I don't know, it kind of walks the boundary of like who can tell a story. I don't subscribe to that train of thought at all. And if it feels right to show something and has the right affect, then that feels truer to me than removing that and having and not having that at all. Then things start to seem like, well, then why even have the scene at all if it doesn't have an effect on someone? And it actually can start to feel exploitative if you're not showing that. The audience can definitely be clued into, well, I see some blood on the blanket. I see some blood over there. Why am I not seeing the wound? Did the camera just not shoot that? I don't believe that at all. And that can take someone out of the movie like immediately. So this film was not about hiding anything at all. Definitely not.
And then one quick final thing. Is the cut on HBO the festival cut, or was it trimmed?
I don't think it's trimmed. So I'm pretty sure it's the best. I mean, I haven't watched it since it's been on HBO. I have my own separate copy, but that's a good question. I'm curious now, and maybe I'll watch it and see if there's any changes. That'd be irritating.
You happen to remember your runtime?
I think it's no, I don't. 143 maybe? 148, something like that.
147 on HBO. So,
okay.
I gotta say, by the way, I met Tyler at Sundance. I was there this year, and I actually did not see the film until it dropped on HBO. But Tyler, I gotta say, like, this would have had to have been the last film I saw at Sundance, because I don't think I would have wanted to watch anything else after this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because this would have just been in my head the entire time. But no, dude, I mean, obviously, you had amazing response. Tyler, by the way, I'm going to sing your praises right now. Won at Sundance, and again, please correct me if this is wrong, best editing of a documentary. That's correct? You won that? Yeah. So, dude, you're doing amazing. I do have a question about the film. So, there's the editing process. You said your initial cut was longer. What was the runtime of the first cut of your film?
I want to say it was 3 hours and 10 minutes. I'm pretty sure, which is surprisingly short for a rough cut. But or for a first assembly, but I think it was 3 hours and 10 minutes. And I mean, David and I had been watching the scenes as we were going, but then we finally like just slammed the whole thing together and got everyone in the crew to sit in the edit room and watch it. And then we talked about it for hours. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 3 hours and 10. I don't think it was longer. Yeah, probably about 3 hours, 10 minutes.
Did you have like a goal or anything, like, or did David have a goal, like, okay, the film needs to be about this long? Was there like a targeted runtime, or was it just?
I think in the doc world, there's this kind of like, oh, the sweet spot that everyone talks about of like 83 minutes for a documentary.
Really?
I have never hit that mark ever. Well, maybe I did in one, but like that just seems like short to me. So no, David has always been, it needs to be as long as it needs to be. You know, most directors I've worked with have been, it needs to be as long as it needs to be. But I think that we when we have test screenings, we don't have them until, and I push for this just to be respectful of people. We don't have them at over 2 hours. Like that's just rude to ask people to sit through 2 hours and then like an hour plus of like feedback. So you know, if you get it below that, but you know, I don't know. I don't think that we were really obsessed with the time. You know, I think that once we're near the ending of the edit, we start to hold scenes up to different criteria than we did at the beginning, and that makes some things in scenes very apparent that you know, parts need to be cut. So you know, you can get a couple minutes out here and there, and then other scenes just melt away, and then you know, you kind of just end up having to say, all right, let's lift up our hands, we're done. And then you have an hour and I guess 47-minute film.
Wow. So let me ask you this. I don't know if you're allowed to tell us this, but you mentioned you're working on another film. Are you allowed to say what that is? Or
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, this isn't for David. This is for a different crew. It's a film directed by, I believe they're first-time feature doc filmmakers, Natalie Patillo and Dan Nelson, and our EP, Natalie Schreier. We're working on a film tentatively titled right now, And So I Stayed. It is a dive into the history of a woman who went to prison for 17 years for killing her abusive boyfriend. It's a self-defense act, and this happens all the time. And we're paralleling her story that happened in the 90s with someone who, you know, it happened to 2 years ago. And it has some very surprising, also shocking footage in it as well. And it, you know, we're deep in, I think, our third cut right now. We're about to have our third test screening, which we're doing all via Zoom with people. But that one's going to be, you know, we're, you know, submitting to film festivals whenever we start to get cuts done, and hopefully it should be out by next year. So look for it. And they have a Facebook too. And So I Stayed. So yeah, check it out. It's going to be another, like, it's going to be a cool doc. They're really like leaving no stone unturned. And it's not the kind of, you say a documentary about domestic violence. It's not what you think, for sure.
okay, yeah, I think we're all definitely going to check that out. So let me ask you this about Welcome to Chechnya. Nick, you know, please let us know if there's any other questions. Do you happen to know, does this film qualify for like the Academy Awards? Like, is this a best documentary potential? Because I know sometimes, you know, if they air on HBO right away, but sometimes festival runs can qualify you for that. I'm not quite sure what the exact ruling is, but.
To be honest, I am so hands off with that kind of stuff. I have no idea. I'm kind of like, the only movie I went to go see at Sundance was our movie. I like don't like going.
I believe it's going to qualify for Primetime Emmys, not the Academy. However, I do know I'm on the documentary committee for the Indie Spirits, and I know it's been submitted to the Indie Spirits.
Okay, there you go. I who knows? I don't even know how to qualify anymore. Like, nothing's going into theaters. Is that a requirement for?
Yeah, well, they're bending it, but because it was intended to go broadcast and there wasn't a theatrical plan, that's going to exclude it. They've loosened it a little bit, but the fact that it went to broadcast is the end of the road for the Oscars.
Cool. Well,
hey, hope to see you on the shortlist for the Spirits.
Hey, we'll take whatever, as long as it elevates the stories. Honestly, like, if it gets more exposure, that'd be great. And it's I mentioned, I guess I didn't mention this earlier. It's in front of HBO's paywall, so like just go to HBO and you can watch it for free. So just let people know, just like to get the word out. So
Absolutely. Nick, do we have any other questions?
There are no more questions.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Tyler, I heard that you are really into pinball. So, first of all, have you ever been to the Silver Ball Museum in Asbury Park? And the second part of my question is, what is your favorite pinball machine?
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, I've been to Asbury many, many times. I love the Silver Ball Museum. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm just going to shout out to the New York Pinball League. That's how I kind of know about pinball and got obsessed with the New York City Pinball League. Hey, what's up, Team Autosave? But yeah, I don't know. Attack from Mars is probably one of my favorite, or Medieval Madness. So yeah.
Awesome.
Why do you play?
I mean, it's fun. Yeah, like if I see a pinball machine somewhere, I'll play. But like, I'm not super into it. But anytime I'm in Asbury, I go to the Silver Ball Museum.
So worth it. So worth it.
If you're ever in the Lehigh Valley, like in Allentown, every year they do like this big pinball expo, and it's just like this giant room that's like wall to wall machines, and they're free to play.
Where's that?
It's at I believe it's at the Anthony, what is that place in Allentown? They have like Comic-Cons there and record conventions and things like that.
We have something like that here?
Yeah. Merchant Square Mall.
Oh, the thing where we did the horror convention.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I forgot that normally happened. I thought that was a one-off random thing. My bad. So.
Well, I'll have to check it out. Pennsylvania has a lot of pinball events. So.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Pinburg, I think, was canceled this year because of coronavirus, but
everything is canceled this year.
Everything's canceled, yeah. So this is Ember the dog. Yeah.
Oh.
Oh wow.
Then if there's no more audience questions, I guess that just about wraps it up.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you so much again for joining us tonight. And it's really important to me to get the word out about this documentary. I think everybody should be watching it and doing their part to help out.
I do have one more question.
Okay.
How did you manage your both you and like your assistants, and I'm not sure if you had people credited as writers or just editors, mental health wise when dealing with that material day in, day out? I mean, 10, 12-hour days, time at, going on long time, it hits you. How was that kind of person? Yeah, with that kind of material. How did you manage that within the office?
That is a tough question, and I don't think that is something that we. The way to answer that is that we each individually had our own methods.
Mechanisms. Yeah.
And a lot of that, I mean, on my end, I meditate a lot, and I think that's something that I just need to shed the day and let things out. But there's, also just group outings was a very important thing that we would do to make sure we have the camaraderie and understand that this is important work that we're doing. But I gotta say, we really were a tight team, and we knew we were working on something that could potentially have some change in people's lives, and that we were just, let's do this. Let's work really hard. I mean, there were plenty of times that David and I were crying in the edit room for sure, but a walk around the block or something would get us back in order and hopping back to it. So
thank you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate all this, everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anthony, do you have any final thoughts?
No, just Tyler, thank you so much again for doing this, man. I really appreciate it. And again, the film is obviously phenomenal and it has such an important message. And if anybody on this call has not seen the film, well, one, you should probably see the film, but just brace yourself. That's all. But you will not regret seeing this. That's all I'm going to say. It is a powerful film, and I hope does take sweeps the Indie Independent Spirit Awards. I hope that one happens. So, yeah.
Got my vote.
Yeah. Right. But yeah,
if you haven't seen How to Survive a Plague, you owe it to yourself to watch that as well. It's an incredible documentary about ACT UP New York and the group of people who basically single-handedly got the FDA to research AIDS medication. So
And Fauci's in it, and it's so
Yeah.
quoted these times. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
How it's just like happening again. It's crazy.
Man. So let me just real quick before we drop, I do want to ask one more question. So you and David, you have an amazing relationship. Is this kind of going to be a thing where like he says I have something, you're going to work with him? Like, is that basically that's it?
He's got something in cooking right now that I'm gonna make sure I'll be able to line up and make happen. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
he's an incredible collaborator, and I'm honored to be working with him, and I can't wait to work with him again for sure.
That's amazing. I mean, you guys just, I mean, you know how to go for the soul like that. You make powerful emotional films together, and please keep doing that. So, and so your new film is called And So I Stayed. So that's what we got to look out for next year, right?
Yeah, check it out. Check it out on Facebook, and look me up on Facebook. Let's be buddies.
All right. And I do have to just say this to you, Tyler. We are Penn State. Okay, I'm by myself. All right. So
No, we're Penn State. Here we go.
I didn't want to scream real loud. So yeah, Tyler and I went to Penn State. So yeah. All right. With that, everybody, yeah, we thank you so much for coming. The film is available on HBO, HBO Now, HBO Max. Check it out. Again, go to steelstacks.org for all the at-home programming we have coming up. And Virtual Music Fest kicks off, I believe, tomorrow. So thank you so much, everybody. I do want to real quick just unmute everyone on the count of 3 to give Adriana and Tyler a big round of applause. So we're going to do that in 3, 2, 1.
Woo! Sending love from Australia.
wow.
Oh,
Great.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, all right. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good night. Take care.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye, Tyler. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.